Welcome everyone to the Retro Horror Academy. My name is Daniel Richardson, and tonight we're going to be looking at the year in horror, 1959. That's right, we're at the end of the decade, and let's just get it. Let's just jump into this thing because we got 10 horror films, the best horror films from 1959. We got another huge inducting class into our Horror Hall of Fame. It's 1959, and this is going to be the year of William Castle and his wacky gimmicks. Like every one of his horror films that he released around this time had some kind of crazy gimmick attached to it. We'll get into two of his big ones, obviously, but I know that he had one film, I can't remember what it was now, where he basically made you like sign like a waiver, like we are not responsible for your death if you die of fright. Or I think one of them was also like, he bought like life insurance in the lobby, or they offered you life insurance in the lobby or whatever. Again, these movies are so scary. So, that was their whole thing right there. So, let's dive right in. Let's get into the Hall of Fame, our Horror Hall of Fame of 1959. We're going to kick things off with Jane Addams, an American actress who, some horror films she did that we did not cover on this show would be Masterminds and The Brute Man. But of course, on this show, we would know her from House of Dracula. I'll be honest with you, for me personally, it's not even horror related why she's in this. Vicky Vale from the old Batman Robin serial. Although, don't get me wrong, she had a pretty brutal death in House of Dracula. Got her ass thrown from the castle window. So, there's that. But yeah, Jane Addams. Welcome to the Horror Hall of Fame. Up next, we have Robert Armstrong, American actor. He'll be best remembered probably for his final line in the film King Kong. "It was beauty killed the beast." As I just mentioned, the one film that he did in the world of horror that we did not cover was King Kong. But on this show, we know him for The Most Dangerous Game and The Mad Ghoul. I really like his performance. He was the alcoholic brother of Fay Ray in The Most Dangerous Game, and I don't know. I always thought this guy was really cool. So I don't know. He's in for the flimsiest of reasons probably, but screw it. It was beauty who killed the beast. He adds a little air of awesomeness to it. So welcome aboard, Robert Armstrong. Our third inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, William Bodine. He was an American director. Very prolific. Like, this guy directed a ton. And I think his kind of lasting legacy he'll be known for doing a lot of Bela Lugosi movies, Charlie Chan films, and he did a lot of the Bowery Boys as well. I think films that he did related to horror that we did not cover on here: Four Shall Die, The Living Ghost, Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla, Voodoo Man, and Mr. Washington Goes to Town. But on this channel, we hit him up with, we reviewed The Ape Man and The Face of Marble. And while The Face of Marble was really good, Ape Man, whatever. I know it was high on our list. I believe it won the Silver Skull, if I'm not mistaken. Because we got people who like trash within the Retro Horror Academy. Anyways, but for me, personally, why, he got my vote to be in our Hall of Fame this year. I am unironically a huge fan of Bela Lugosi Meets the Brooklyn Gorilla. I think it's brilliant. I think it's funny. I laugh when I watch that one. Again, unironically. Yes, it's bad. Yes, they ripped off Dean and Martin. Doesn't matter. Or sorry, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Yes, they ripped them off. I don't care. I like that movie. And so, yeah, you know what? He's in just for that reason alone. So, all right. So next in our Horror Hall of Fame class of 1959, Otto Kruger. I don't think it's Kruger. There's not an extra E in there. I'm going to say Kruger. Otto Kruger, American actor, former Broadway star. He's known for usually playing villains. In fact, he's best known for playing in Alfred Hitchcock's Saboteur, and he was in Perry Mason as well. I think some stuff that he did that we didn't cover on this. He did a couple episodes of Suspense, an episode of Lights Out. He was in The Woman who came back, and the Colossus of New York. But on this channel, this show, we covered him in Dracula's Daughter and The Jungle Captive. And yeah, like him in both of those. You know, he's a therapist in Dracula's Daughter. He was the mad scientist in The Jungle Captive. Yeah, just, again, another one of those guys who, again, he didn't do as much in horror. Or, again, I didn't cover a lot of the stuff he did. Like I said, I just mentioned some stuff I didn't see, man. But, I don't know, I think when he did do it, he did good. So moving on. Up next, we have Barry Lyndon. Not to be confused with the Stanley Kubrick movie. No, Barry Lyndon. He was a British playwright. Let me try that again. He was a British playwright and screenwriter. He's definitely going to be best known for writing The Man in Half Moon Street, as well as that was a play he did, and then he also wrote The Lodger, and the screenplay for The Man in Half Moon Street as well. Of course, The Man in Half Moon, or The Half Moon Street, would get remade as The Man Who Would Cheat Death. Not trying to do any spoilers, but we'll definitely come back to that later. And kind of interesting side note here, he was actually a journalist of motor racing before he got into writing plays. He did that, and I think he wrote some short stories as well. But yeah, his big success was kind of when he became a playwright. Some movies that, you know, in the world of horror that he did that we had not covered: Hangover Square, The Lodger, and an episode of Matinee Theater. But of course, on this channel, we know him as The Man in Half Moon Street writer. So there you have it. And yes, again, just because this is a really good story and it has spawned, you know, a lot of good from it. And The Lodger as well. I mean, again, we didn't cover it, but if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Hitchcock's film. Brilliant. Sorry, I usually give you guys a heads up when I take a drink. Thought that would be a small drink, and I end up chugging it a little bit. Moving on now. The next member of our inducting class, Michael Redgrave. English actor. He started off doing theater, but then would eventually go on and debut on film in Alfred Hitchcock's The Lady Vanishes. He would be nominated for an Oscar, 2 BAFTAs, and would actually win Best Actor at Cannes. So there you go. He's, you know, the only thing he did that we covered on this show was Dead of Night. His only brush with horror, but you know what? He was so good in that boom, you get yourself in the Horror Hall of Fame, buddy. So there you have it. Our next inductee into the Horror Hall of Fame, number 7, if you're keeping track at home, Mark Robson, a Canadian writer, director, and editor. Best known for directing Peyton's Place, probably. But he was nominated twice for an Oscar, 4 times by the Directors Guild, and 2 of his films would go on to win the Cannes Palme d'Or. Sure I didn't pronounce that right. But anyways, some movies he did that we did not cover. He wrote and directed Bedlam, and he edited The Leopard Man. Both of those were really good, by the way. But of course on this channel, he was the editor of Cat People. He edited the I Walk with a Zombie. And then he was the director of The Seventh Victim and Isle of the Dead. All these films I just mentioned that he did was all Val Lewton produced. He was part of that team, you know, that brought all these, you know, kind of very low budget but highly psychological horror films in the 40s with RKO. Part of that, you know, Val Lewton team. And yeah, he definitely deserves his spot. Like I said, a lot of these films, I mean, they're all bangers. They're all great. You look down this list, all good stuff. So yeah, there you have it. Mark Robson, get in here. And our final inductee into the 1959 Horror Hall of Fame, Oscar Wilde, Irish poet and playwright. He would best be known for writing The Picture of Dorian Gray. He was actually jailed for being a homosexual in a time when that was just not acceptable, you know. Both of his parents were intellectuals, and he attended 2 different universities. Of course, he, you know, ran with more of a fashionable, cultured, and you know, social circles. And yeah, for his time, he was kind of the best known personality of the day. You know, he was always known for his biting wit and his flamboyant attires. And of course, you know, the Picture of Dorian Gray was, you know, best known work, but it would be banned in certain areas just because of its, you know, its content or whatever. Unfortunately, he passed away in 1900. Some movies that, you know, shows that, you know, his work was or that was done from his work that we did not cover on the show. The 1915 and 1916 versions of the picture of Dorian Gray. They did an episode of that with Tales of Tomorrow and an episode of Matinee Theater. However, on this channel we covered. Now I had to look into it to make sure, and I thought I read it before when we did cover it. But the 1920 version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was listed on his IMDb filmography, and I was like, wait a minute, what? That was Robert Louis Stevenson. But when I looked it up, the guy who wrote the screenplay said that he based a lot of Mr. Hyde on Dorian Gray, and they gave him the credit for like uncredited, whatever. So to just show you the influence of his novel, and then of course the movie, The Picture of Dorian Gray, and yeah, again he kind of falls under certain categories of people who wrote like one thing, and then kind of get by on that. But you know what? The Picture of Dorian Gray, iconic in the world of horror. And so, yeah, you know what? Oscar Wilde, you're in here, buddy. So there you guys have it. That is the 1959 class in the Horror Hall of Fame. Just a quick recap. Jane Addams, Robert Armstrong, William Bodine, Otto Kruger, Barry Lyndon, Michael Redgrave, Mark Robson, and Oscar Wilde. So there you have it. So guys, let's get into it. Our top 10 horror films from 1959. At number 10, we have Curse of the Undead. So basically, you got this disease that is going through this little western town and it's killing all these young women. Or is it? Because it turns out this gunslinger who's coming through town, he's actually a vampire. And it's going to be up to this preacher to bring him down. And of course, unbeknownst to him, his girlfriend is getting kind of close with this vampire, so this kind of adds an extra log to that fire. Horror western, which shakes things up. Haven't seen them yet. This is written by a husband and wife team, Edward and Mildred Dean, and apparently they've been writing for the studio for a while, and this was more of a gag. Like they were just joking around when they wrote the script of this, but it kind of backfired because the studio actually liked it. It was like, yeah, let's make it. This got middling reviews at best. However, it'll be known as the first vampire western, so it's got that going for it. Honestly, I liked it. I think just because since doing this show, I've been doing nothing but watching all these old horror films. And so it was kind of refreshing to see it set in the Old West. I'm not a huge western fan, but I don't know, every now and then a western I can get swept up in one. Even as a kid, I remember I wouldn't watch westerns, but every now and then I'd just kind of come across one. And I'd be like, oh, and it just kind of hooked me. So it was kind of the same thing with this one, where it's just like, again, maybe not the best movie, but at the same time, it was just refreshing to see something different than just mad scientists or giant, creatures, giant bugs attacking everything. So yeah, I gave it a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. This thing got a 6.0 on IMDb. Yeah, that seems about right. All right then. So moving on. To number 9, we have The Man Who Could Cheat Death. Basically, it's this guy he's an artist and a scientist, because you can do that, I guess. And this takes place in late 1800s in Paris. And basically, what he has to do is he's basically killing people and taking a gland. Like from time to time, he'll kill somebody to take this gland from their body and put it in his, and that's how he maintains his health and youth. This thing was directed by Terence Fisher, written by Jimmy Sangster, based on the play by newly inducted Hall of Famer Barry Lyndon, based on his play The Man in Half Moon Street, and it stars Christopher Lee and Hazel Court. And of course, with a group like that, it's Hammer. Initially, the lead was supposed to be played by Peter Cushing. But he actually refused it because he was just tired. He just finished coming off The Hounds of Baskerville, and just said no to shooting this. And I guess at this point, Universal Studios and Hammer are working together, and they were pretty upset about this. However, he never he just finished up his contract with them, so he didn't have he wasn't under contract with Hammer at this point, and so they could really do nothing to him. He was just not doing it. They're pissed. They had to go with their second choice, which would wind up being Anton Diffring. Anton would play this character. There was an episode of Hour of Mystery where they did this exact, the Man of Half Moon Street. And so yeah, he actually did that. Or sorry, yeah, man, yeah, is that right? But he did this, very character. So they gave it to him, and obviously, he did it just, I thought he did all right with it, not bad. However, Universal being a little petty about it, they end up taking this and just shoving it into the second half of whatever double feature it was going to be, featured in. So they definitely kind of pushed it down, the card a little bit on that one. Turns out there were some European cuts of this movie. So we didn't see it in the UK version, we didn't see it in the US, but in other areas like Italy or France, we got some topless Hazel Court. There's a scene in this movie, if you remember, if you've seen it, where, she's modeling for this sculpture that he's doing, and she's nude, but you don't see anything. She's got her back to the camera. Well, apparently we've got full frontal in some of these cuts. Unfortunately, all these cuts have been lost. The prints are all gone now. However, being the perv that I am and wanting to, being a big fan of Hazel Court from her, Hammer days, and I think this may have been her last movie. Like, she just got started, and this was it. But anyways, I looked it up online, and yep, you can find these pictures. I guess they took pictures of her topless because I guess the producers were also perverts. Anyway, so yeah, if you want to see Hazel Court nude, which is such a weird thing to say out loud, like I'm hearing myself say it, because it's like, I don't know if she's even still alive. This is like, a sex symbol from the 50s, and I'm like, you want to see her naked? Well, I did, because I grew up watching her movies. So anyways, but yeah, they're online for you to peruse at your own leisure. So even when this thing came out, it actually stayed in the circuit for quite a while. It was playing mostly small towns or whatever. Again, on the second half of these double bills, or even the last third of a triple bill. But it went on for like nearly 6 years in rotation. So this did get, however, some mixed reviews when it came out. And even though it was very unsuccessful, it would over time gain a cult following. Taking a quick drink. So what do I think about The Man Who Could Cheat Death? Again, I was a big fan of the Man of Half Moon Street. Same story, not much changes except for some side boob from Hazel Court. But no, seriously, not much has changed, but I still enjoy it. And again, Christopher Lee, with the kind of side role he gets in this one, I thought he did really good. Anton Diffring, I thought he was really good in this. Again, watching it now, I'm thinking, oh, we should have been Peter Cushing. But it's not like it made or broke this movie, in my opinion. I thought it was still good. So, yeah, no, I enjoy it. I always felt like, I guess because, it's different, obviously. But I always kind of felt like this was a lot like The Picture of Dorian Gray. Just in the sense that, like, you get this guy who is staying forever young. But, of course, with The Picture of Dorian Gray, it was the painting that, he had to make sure was safe. And here, he's got to do this transplant every so often, like every 50 years or whatever to, keep staying youthful or whatever. But no, I thought it was really, really good. In fact, I'd almost put this above the original Man of Half Moon Street, just because I don't know. I like the police investigation in this one. Like I said, Christopher Lee does really good. Hazel Court, gorgeous as always. Yeah, big thumbs up for this one. So yeah, I like it. It got a 6.3 on IMDb and a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes. So there you have it. The Man Who Could Cheat Death. So now we're moving on to number 8. And I'm talking about Beast from Haunted Cave. So you got this group of robbers who pull off a heist. They steal all this gold, and they escape into the mountains during a blizzard. However, there is a monster chasing them as well. So this was released as a part of a double feature with The Wasp Woman, another Corman film. This was actually produced by Gene Corman, Roger Corman's brother, and directed by Monty Hellman, who actually got his start in, he was a theater director, but became good friends with Roger Corman, and, the rest is history. So this thing was actually inspired by the success of a previous film that Corman did called Naked Paradise. And I guess when Corman decided to do this movie, he basically just told Charles Griffith to be like, listen, I want you to write the script. Basically, you're just making Naked Paradise, but have a gold mine instead of a pineapple plantation. Set it in South Dakota, and put a monster in it. And that's his instructions. And I'm like, man, I would love to have made movies for Roger Corman. Like, seriously, that would have been great. I would have made any schlocky film he wanted, and it would have been brilliant. To stretch the money, because that's what Corman likes to do, they end up shooting 2 movies back to back. So after this film wrapped up, they went right into their next film, Ski Troop Attack. So Didn't have the pleasure. Don't know if it's any good or not. Anyway, this movie was actually hard to film because of the weather conditions. It was so cold that a lot of the equipment was like frozen when they tried to shoot it, or shoot with it. So, yeah, didn't have the best of luck there. A sequel was actually planned for this movie, but it was canceled, which really kind of blows my mind. I'm like, dude, he was like notorious for just making these cheapy little throwaway films. Like, you couldn't just do a sequel. I don't know. Seems kind of odd to me, but whatever. However, they actually did film more for this because when it came time to sell to TV, the movie's just a little over it's a little over an hour long. They needed like 80 minutes, so they literally shot like 20 minutes of additional footage, which, from what I understand, it ranges from like it fits the movie to just like nope, just random ass shit thrown in there all together. I would love to see the TV cut at some point because I think it'd be kind of fun to watch. The script was actually kind of reworked later on, and they would kind of reuse it for Creature from the Haunted Sea. So, yeah, there you go. What I like about this movie, I enjoyed it. Again, I know what to expect from these Corman low-budget films, especially kind of during this, like, crime, drama, horror films, But, overall, I enjoyed it. I dug it. I thought the monster was kind of cheesy, but again, I wasn't expecting much. Actually, I think it looks better than what was the one on the island? The Brains, Attack of the Brain People. I can't remember. Came out. We reviewed it like I don't know, a couple episodes back. I'm looking it up right now. Sorry guys, that's how unprofessional I am here. Not the Crawling Eye. It was. Too far back. Can't find it. Oh, Attack of the Crab Monsters. That's what it was. Attack of the Crab Monsters. That's what it was. I look better than those monsters, so yeah, is what it is. But I enjoyed it. Again, it's not for everyone, and to prove it's not for everyone, IMDb has it ranked at 4.3 and a 67% on Rotten Tomatoes. So yeah, clearly I'm in the minority here, but I don't know. I walked away with a smile. I thought it was good, so I'm all for it. But we'll move on now to number 7 in the film Teenagers from Outer Space. So we got a teenage alien and a teenage Earthling, and they fall in love. However, now they gotta stop the alien race, that the teenage aliens from. They're coming to Earth, and they're basically going to use our planet to start breeding these giant monsters. They're like giant lobster-looking things. On this planet. It's their food source, but unfortunately that would be, catastrophic for the Earthlings here. And so now they gotta stop that. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the guy's name right or not, but I'm gonna give it a shot. A dude named Tom Gareth. I'm gonna say Gareth. Which can't be right because the R is before the A, but it doesn't matter. Tom Gareth, he starred, wrote, directed, produced, edited, did the cinematography, the special effects, and was the music coordinator on this movie. Dude was a one-man band. And 3 of the producers also starred in this film, so very low budget, very, everyone pulling together to get this. Man from my own heart, I swear, I love hearing stories like this. This guy actually posed as a UCLA student to get a location. He used it for free. He just convinced a woman that, hey, I'm a student here, and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, you're a student? I'll help you out, and gave him the location for free. Unfortunately, there was some bad blood between Tom Gareth and the other producers because after the movie was done, he sold off the rights of the film, but never gave them their cut of the dough or whatever, which would lead to a lawsuit and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, this movie bombed, and it was a major failure, and it would signal the beginning of the end for Tom Gareth. On a more serious note, he would eventually have a mental breakdown. And he would start running around proclaiming that he was the second coming of Christ. He was later arrested when he disrupted a church service, I guess talking about how he's the second coming. And then he would eventually kind of leave Hollywood for a few years. He would be gone until 1964 and he'd come back. Not sure if he really did anything beyond that, but unfortunately in 1970, the dude would kill himself. And that would be the end of Tom Gareth. So, yeah, kind of a crazy turn from this. And I hate to hear that, because again, it's like, I'm sure a ton of people go to Hollywood and fail. No need to have a breakdown or freak out about it, but. But It is what it is. Moving right along. So most people, when you make a movie, you shoot everything, and then you have to do ADR to get the voices back on there sometimes. And that's when you record the audio, the voices, and you got to sync it up to what you already shot. But here they did the opposite, where they actually did all the dialogue first, and then as they shot it, they try to sync it up in real time, drunk history style, which is crazy to me because I'm like, I didn't even know people even tried that, seriously, and not just for comedic effect or whatever. Anyways, the score of this movie was actually just stock music, but apparently this has been used in a ton of horror movies, B movies, mostly. In fact, it would be famously remixed and used in Night of the Living Dead. Like I said before, it is a complete failure, and even the reviews were very negative for this thing when it came out. For me, honestly, I actually enjoyed this movie. I think I would have been a sucker for these teenage drive-in movies. We got these teenagers now who are saving the world instead of, the adult authority figures that we've had in the past. And, I don't know. I thought this, again, I'm not saying this was brilliant, but I enjoyed it. I thought, again, it's about the same shit we've been watching over and over. Just a little refreshing, I guess, The only thing I will say is, the giant lobster monsters. Oh, so cheesy. So cheesy. Beyond cheesy. Because even and we'll get to, a giant creature feature next, actually, that, maybe some people will look at that and be like, the effects were kind of cheesy on that too, but I thought that looks really good compared to this. This was just horrid. It was just he's showing the movie, and then he brought in a flashlight, and then made shadows of this lobster on the screen. And that's what we get. Those are the giant monsters. I don't know. But everything up to that, I thought was, again, it was standard for its time, but again, a little different, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. So, anyways, but again, minority on this one, because this thing got a 3.9 on IMDb. So, there you have it. But yes, that was number 7, Teenagers from Outer Space. So, moving right along now to number 6, I am talking about the giant Gila monster. That's right, in a little country town in Texas, the giant Gila monster is running rampant, and it's up to this one teenager to stop and save the day. First things first, it is not a Gila monster, it's actually a Mexican bearded lizard. However, apparently they both look very similar, so I'm going to cut them some slack there. This thing was shot back-to-back with the film The Killer Shrews, and they were both the first films to be shot and produced completely in Dallas. And apparently they were both the first films to be intended to be premiered together at a double feature. So I guess apparently before this, you knew it was going to be a part of a double feature, but usually the first or second half of it. But this is the first time they actually shot 2 movies back to back. It's like, you know what? They're both going to be our double features. So they're both making their debut. This movie got mixed reviews. However, it would inspire a remake in 2012. Made for TV, but it was called Gila. And of course, the last little tidbit here is the font on the movie poster here is the same font that Danzig used when he went solo. So there you go. Again, I like this movie. I don't know. It's cheesy, and I'll be the first to admit that not everything's a home run, but you know what? I can't help it. I do like this style of movie. I like these teenagers, especially in the 50s. It has a Happy Days vibe to it, so that's probably why I like it so much. Listen to that rock and roll, and they're dancing in the barn and all this other crazy shit, hot rodding. I don't know. It speaks to me, and I enjoy it. I'm okay with the lizard effects. Again, you can tell they just had a bunch of models and miniatures, and it just had a real monster just slowly walking around. But it looked better than the monsters in Teenagers from Outer Space, so, you got that going for it. I'm giving this a thumbs up. I actually enjoyed it. I can also laugh at it, though. I enjoyed that's one of my favorite Mystery Science Theater episodes is when they cover this. But, no, even on its own, I enjoyed it. Again, though, it got a 3.7 on the IMDb, so apparently I'm the only one who legitimately likes this movie. But, hey, eat it. So, we're moving right along now. We're in the top half. Midway through this count now, it's number 5. The movie is The Tingler. You got this pathologist who basically discovers and then tries to capture this parasite that when you get scared, it attaches itself to your spinal cord. And yeah, so and it's just kind of like, this dude's obsession trying to figure out exactly what this thing is. This was produced and directed by William Castle, and it stars Vincent Price. The gimmick that he uses, earlier we talked about the gimmicks of William Castle. Well, the gimmick they used in this was called Percepto. And basically what it was is they had put in the seats of their theaters these little motors that would vibrate, when they hit the switch or whatever, which would make you think the Tingler has now got a hold of you. This thing got mixed reviews, but would go on to become a cult classic. And apparently there was a novel, a sequel novel that came out a couple years ago called The Tingler Unleashed. So if you're wanting to know how this story goes on beyond this film, check out the book. This would be the second time that William Castle and Vincent Price would team up. They, of course, had successful teaming with The House on Haunted Hill. And so, we're going at it again. This is the first mainstream film to show a character dropping acid on screen. So if you want to see Vincent Price have an acid trip, check it out. So apparently what they would do, and this wasn't every theater. In fact, I don't think every theater had the Percepto. I think these were mostly in major cities or, whatever. But in some screenings, they would actually hire a woman to be a plant, like in the audience. But there would be a certain point in the movie where she would just faint. And they'd bring in paramedics, again, hired by the studio. And they would carry her out. This would be the cue to, hey, we're going to start turning on the Tingler. And get that portion of the movie. And apparently they would also hire fake screamers to go into this movie to scream as well. So to also add to this thing. In the movie, if you remember, there's a scene where the lights go out. And of course, Vincent Price is talking to the crowd in the theater in the movie. But it's also like he's talking to you sitting in the theater as well. Because he tells you, hey, the Tingler is now on the loose in the theater. And that's, of course, would be the cue to turn on the Percepto and have everyone buzz. However, I guess they actually did alternate audio with this, because for drive-in audiences, instead of that, he would say, hey, the Tingler is now loose in the drive-in. So, there you go. Turns out the two leads, well, I guess, the romantic lead, I guess, not Vincent Price, but the other two leads, they were actually a couple, Daryl Hickman and Pamela Lincoln. And they actually would get married shortly after the movie came out, actually. But the reason I bring it up, though, is Daryl Hickman only took this job because William Castle told him, like, hey, this will help your, fiance out, become a bigger star, which I don't think it did. But he told him that, and that's why he agreed to do the movie. In fact, I read a couple of sources that he actually did the movie for free. Now, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's what I read. So either way, there you go. William Castle, Carney till the end. And then there's a story I read where apparently in one theater they were showing a film called The Nun Story, which I guess was just a drama about nuns. I don't know. Didn't look into it. But anyways, I guess during one of the screenings, because it was shown in the same auditorium that the Tingler was going to be shown in. And I'm not sure if it came on before or after. It doesn't matter. But when the Nun Story is going on, I guess the projectionist accidentally flipped the switch to turn the Tingler on, so everybody watching this boring-ass drama about nuns gets a jolt in the ass when they're like, oh, shit, the Tingler. So, well, that was just kind of funny right there. The death mute in this movie was actually, if you look kind of familiar, it's because she actually played Mrs. Lonelyheart in Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. But unfortunately, this would be her last role right here. So one thing about this movie, overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it had a really good start, build it up, but I felt like once we kind of got to, I guess once we discover the Tingler and the Tingler's actually out, and you see this like bad rubber fucking monster thing. I don't know. When it got to that point, I was just very much like, and then it just like the whole movie slowed down. When we get to like, the death mute being attacked, and then the Tingler's loose in the auditorium or the theater. Again, this may have been a movie that would have been a hoot to see live. Like, I don't know if they still even do this anywhere. That'd be kind of interesting to have like a William Castle night with all the gimmicks in play. But for some reason, sitting at home, it just didn't quite translate as well. Again, Vincent Price, phenomenal actor, and he kills it in this movie. But I'm just saying, overall, I don't know. Half of this movie worked for me, and then by the ending, I was just kind of like over it. But I guess is my opinion. This does have a 6.6 though on IMDb and a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I swear I'm not trying to be different or mainstream. I'm not trying to be a hipster here and just go against what everyone else is doing. But there you have it. All right, take a drink. That's a tasty beverage right there. Alrighty, so now we're moving on to our number 4 film, our number 4 horror film of 1959, and it is The Ghost of Yotsua. Don't know if I'm even saying that right. It's a movie about a samurai's wife who's dead, but comes back from the grave to haunt him and get her revenge on her husband. This is a Japanese horror film, and this thing has actually been made, like, the story is, I don't know if you actually call it remake or not. I think it's kind of like Dracula, it's based on a play that, everyone's doing. But I don't know if they're actually trying to remake a previous movie. But it's been done 3 times prior. In fact, we covered it once on here. The film was The Ghost of Yutsuya Part 1. But apparently, though, this is considered by a lot of critics to be, like, the definitive version. Like, this is the movie that, everyone talks about. When it comes to this play, what I think about I think it looked more gruesome and it looked creepier. I'll give him that. I think I like, and see, the problem with the Ghost of Yutsuya 1 was you only got the first half of it. You didn't really get the wife getting the revenge on the husband. Like, we never did come across part 2, and it never did make any of our list. So, but this was like the full story. But with that said, I don't know. It's funny because, when it's a different language and you're reading subtitles, a lot of times, I don't know, I guess I just don't really think about it, like the acting involved. I swear, though, it seemed like the acting was way better in the other version than this one. Like, it just, I don't know, I didn't care for the husband's performance. I couldn't tell you who the actor is now to save my life, but, like, I don't know. I think visually it's much better. More gruesome when you see the dead wife and even the other guy he sets up and kills, when they come back to haunt him, dude, they look grotesque. The story itself pretty much plays out the same again, and it's very similar to like any of like the Cat Mansion saga movies. Even though it's a slightly different story, they're basically the same movie, I feel. And so from that perspective, it's not bad. I mean, it hits every point you're wanting it to hit, But yeah, I think I kind of like the original one better, but this was still good as well. I'm giving it a thumbs up. So yeah, and it's got a 7.0 on IMDb. I think it's like one of the highest rated ones we got from this 1959 list. So there you have it. The Ghost of Yutsuya, number 4. So now we're getting to the top 3, and this is where we start handing out the awards. The first is the Bronze Skull Award, and this is the number 3 horror film of 1959. It goes to The Mummy. So we're going back to the late 1800s, and these British archaeologists, they finally opened up the tomb of Princess Anaka. However, that's just going to happen. That curse is real. So, it's a British horror film, as I mentioned. Stars Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, directed by Terence Fisher, and it's written by Jimmy Sangster. So you know what that means, don't you? With that crew, you know it's a Hammer horror film. In the U.S., this thing was double billed with The Bat, which was a Vincent Price film, and Curse of the Undead, which we talked about earlier. Even though I think a lot of people kind of think this is supposed to be a remake of the 1932 version of The Mummy, but actually it has a lot more in common with the Mummy's tomb and the Mummy's the Mummy's hand and the Mummy's ghost. Uses the name of Karis and everything. In fact, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, because Hammer already did the version of Dracula and Frankenstein, but I don't think they really had any permission from Universal. Like they didn't, they just kind of took it upon themselves to go back to the source material of those. Whereas this was, property of Universal, and so they worked out, and that's why they even used the name Karis for the Mummy instead of Imhotep, which was the 1932 one. And so there, this kind of goes to show you that this is more of a remake of those later films than the original. So the British censors kind of cut some stuff out of this movie. So apparently this scene where Duke gets his tongue cut out and the mummy getting blasted with the shotguns in the swamp was much more gruesome and graphic initially, until the censor stepped in and made him cut it. The scene where Peter Cushing runs the spear through the mummy was actually his idea. So apparently they already had the poster artwork done, which I didn't know they did that back then, but it was already ready to go before they were even shooting it. And the poster, if you've ever seen it, it just shows like the mummy standing there like really tall, but he's got like this lightning bolt like shaped hole with like light emitting from it through his torso. And I guess when Peter Cushing saw it, he's like, let me just run a spear through him so it can kind of resemble that, from the poster. And I guess they agreed to it, so they're like, yeah, go for it. So they did. This thing got mixed reviews when it came out, which, I'll get to my opinion on that here in a second. Apparently the guy who wrote the original Mummy saw this movie. We're talking about from 1932. And he hated it. He was not a fan of this film at all. I read it. I don't remember what his exact reason was, but I don't know. It seemed more like jealousy than anything else. Or he was just so old school, like to him, just a little mummy coming at you slowly, trying to choke you out. That was exciting back then. But this is going too far right now. Like these kids today and their horror. I don't know. I just remember reading the excuse, going, "Yeah, this is fucking bullshit." Anyways, so Christopher Lee, apparently he injured himself a shit ton in this one movie alone. So, and the thing is, like, people, they see it, and they're like, oh man, his performance is so great, because, he's limping the whole time, and, the mummy always had that shamble to him. Well, apparently that was not an act. This was all real. So, here's a list of injuries this guy occurred during the filming. For one, on the minor side of things, he was, when he was in the swamp, that was just like a giant tank, but it had all that murky water in it. And I guess there was pipes inside this, little tank that was pumping in the water or whatever. He kept like whacking his shins on that for one, so he was bruising his legs up from all that. Then the scene where when Peter Cushing is about to go, or go to bed or whatever, and then the mummy just breaks the door down. Well, apparently, and this is the take they used, that door was like bolted shut, like the stagehand didn't unlock it yet. And so Christopher Lee fucking bulldozed through it, breaks it off his handle or whatever. But in the process of doing so, he dislocated his shoulder and broke his hand. But they use the take. So the take you see is him literally breaking through a locked door. When he gets shot with the shotgun, he had squibs inside his outfit. One squibs burned his arm. And then to top it all off, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this girl's last name or not, but Yvonne Fernero, when he was carrying her, apparently threw his back out. So, poor Christopher Lee. Feel sorry for the guy. One of the movies, it's funny it says that mixed reviews. I absolutely love this. In fact, I'll say right now, my favorite mummy movie that we've covered on this show so far. Now, don't get me wrong, I know I'm definitely a minority here. I enjoyed the Mexican mummy movies, the Aztec mummy. I like those movies. I don't care what you say. And so, I mean, again, it was really the only mummy we covered. So, like, yeah, in my opinion, the Universal mummy movies were just so low on the list. They're very trite and boring and just by the numbers and just slow. At least the Mexican has a lot of, has a different high energy to it. It's fun. It mixes genres, so it's not just straight up, adventure in Egypt. It's like, no, we add, crime fighting and Mexican wrestlers and a robot. I don't know. They're fun. But this one, it adds the horror to it. And it just has that Hammer vibe. And I mean, I can't explain it beyond that. I just love the look of it. I love the feel of it. But I also I don't know. Like I said, I mean, we're seeing the mummy just demolish, he's breaking into, places and, I don't know. And he's still just strangling, but it just looks more brutal and more violent. And I think Christopher Lee is the best mummy. Much how Boris Karloff was able to kind of emote through that makeup job when he was Frankenstein's monster. And he kind of gave a real humanity to that monster. I feel the same way about Christopher Lee in this thing. Like, when you look at his face, he's acting his ass off inside this thing. I don't know. I really dig it. It's always great seeing Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee together again. Terrence Fisher as director, I think, he's really good. he has a sense of fun with it too. That's the other thing. Like, I don't know. I can't explain it. I love just the look of his films and just the nice flow of them more than anything else. And I guess a lot should be said about Jimmy Sangster as the writer too. I keep bringing his name up, but it's like he's clearly a part of this winning formula for these guys. So yeah, I'm giving it a huge thumbs up. This thing got a 6.6 on IMDb. That seems kind of low. It does have a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes though, and that seems about right. And this thing made 400,000 at the box office, which back then was probably a shit ton of money. So, anyways, there you have it. The number 3 horror film of 1959, The Mummy. So now, let's go ahead. We're going to go to our number 2 horror film of 1959, and a winner of the Silver Skull Award. I am talking about House on Haunted Hill, where this millionaire is going to offer 5 people $10,000 a piece if they can, stay inside this haunted house, locked. Not just stay. They're going to be locked inside, but they can make it overnight with him and his wife. They get $10,000. This movie stars Vincent Price, directed by William Castle, and of course we mentioned Castle's gimmicks before. And this had Emergo. Emergo. We're gonna call it Emergo. But basically, when the skeleton pops up on the screen, guess what? A skeleton would pop out of the side from the movie screen in the theaters and come at you in the audience. I think in their mind, they thought like you would, pull this ripcord and this fucking skeleton would come flying out and just scare the shit out of everybody. But from what I've heard in interviews and whatnot from people who actually remember doing this and whatever, apparently this thing came out on this like rinky ass pulley system, in which slowly, go across the audience, like above the audience. And it was more laughable than anything else. And a lot of people, I guess, when word kind of got out, people would try to like throw shit at the skeleton to try and knock it down. So people are now throwing their cups and popcorn containers, and kids are bringing their slingshots in, and just all this kind of wacky, whatever, which just sounds hilarious to me. I wish I could have been there firsthand for these gimmicks, and I mean the experience of live, like not knowing about going into it, not knowing about the tinglers, zapping your ass, or the giant fucking skeleton coming out of whatever. That just seems like a lot of fun to me. Apparently Steven Tyler of Aerosmith was a big fan of this movie. Who knew? This gimmick would actually wind up being very successful and would draw a lot of people in when they heard about it. And this movie was a huge success financially. In fact, it's said that Alfred Hitchcock took notice of this because, again, he's seeing this low-budget horror film rake in a ton of money. And he kind of used some of the tactics of marketing when he would make his next little low-budget horror film, a little movie called Psycho. I think another kind of cool thing about that is the fact that like William Castle was a huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock. So to kind of hear like Hitchcock was kind of looking at Castle, for some inspiration, that probably meant a lot to William Castle, I'd say. So this is kind of cool. This thing not only was it a big financial success, it was a critical success. Like a lot of good reviews for this movie came out. This movie would get remade in 1999, which personally I'm a huge fan of the remake. And apparently there's another remake that's in development, but it's been in development since 2017, and there's been no word since. So who knows what's happening with that. Apparently how William Castle and Vincent Price met was Vincent Price was going in for a totally different movie, different director, studio, whatever, and he didn't get the part. And then when him and Castle kind of bumped into each other, and Price told him, Castle took him out for coffee, and then decided to kind of pitch him House on Haunted Hill, to which Vincent Price loved, and the rest, as they say, is history. Apparently, one of the posters, not only did it feature a skeleton, but it literally showed, or I think it showed a woman being hung on there, and it showed Vincent Price like holding his wife's severed head or whatever. And a lot of newspapers were like, nope, we're not putting that in our paper at all. And so the studio kind of instructed a lot of these theaters to kind of be like, hey, this movie is so scary that they won't even put the poster in the ads, and don't put the poster up in your theater. Like, we're gonna play it up like this thing is so messed up, like even the poster is too scary. And so they did, and again, this movie made a shit ton of money. Apparently, this is one of Elvira's, if not her, favorite film ever. Kind of cool. Vincent Price, he has a line in this movie where he says it's close to midnight, Well, that's the very first line in Michael Jackson's Thriller, which, as you know, Vincent Price also provides some spooky narration in. So everything comes full circle here. And apparently, because it's cheaper to use the real thing as opposed to going out and buying one, the skeleton used in this movie was real. So there is that. So what I think about this movie? I think this movie has one of the best jump scares in horror history. I think it still works today. You know, is that what I'm talking about? The witch-looking lady, she's one of the caretakers or whatever of the house. Whenever they're, you know, they hear the noise and you know they go to investigate, and when she turns around, boom, there she is, and it's just like holy shit, and it's freaky as hell. Beyond that, I don't know. The movie itself, I don't know. I feel like it's very watchable to a certain point, and then it just gets boring to me. And again, I'm just speaking for myself, but it's like when we get to the end, I'm just like, I don't care. It just, I don't know. It's very dull. It's very. I think it's better than The Tingler, but I don't think it's better than 13 Ghosts. Those are the three William Castle movies I've seen. I know we haven't covered 13 Ghosts yet, but those are the three I've seen, and that's kind of where I put it on. I think, you know, again, I think the performances are really good, but I don't know. Overall, I just kind of feel like this movie, I think the reputation's much better than how it really plays out. I'm probably not saying anything too crazy, being from a different generation, but I prefer the 99 remake to this, actually. So, but that's just me personally. However, this thing does have a 6.7 on IMDb, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this thing made $2.5 million at the box office. So, who the fuck am I to, you know, say otherwise? But anyways, House on Haunted Hill, number 2 horror film of 1959. So that brings us down to our number 1 horror film of 1959, winner of the Golden Skull Award. I am talking about A Bucket of Blood. So you got this busboy who works at this cafe that's frequented by beatniks, and you know, he's not the sharpest, you know, tool in the shed, but he accidentally kills a cat. And so he's trying to hide this cat, and so he ends up kind of putting, you know, sculptor's clay on it, and it looks like he kind of made a sculpture, a dying cat sculpture, you know. However, when people see the sculpture, dude, he becomes the biggest hit of town, right? Like, he's the new to-be artist. And so now they want to see more, and so unfortunately he has to kill others to make more sculptures. So, this movie stars Dick Miller, directed by Roger Corman, and is written by Charles B. Griffith. This is Roger Corman's first attempt at comedy. His previous films had, you know, elements of humor, you know, in them, but he never did like an out-and-out comedy. And in fact, it would be so successful here that he would actually go ahead and do it with The Little Shop of Horrors and Creature from the Haunted Sea later on. So, the idea behind this one was, when he told Charles, you know, what to write, it was basically, let's do Mystery of the Wax Museum, but set it, you know, within the beatnik culture. Apparently, they just went to like a cafe and were just kind of, you know, surrounded by all these I don't know my history of beatnik culture. I gotta think this is toward the end, because I know the hippie culture is just right around the corner. So this has got to be the end, you know, if not the height of beatnik, you know, whatever. So, but they were kind of seeing this all around them, so they decided, you know, let's set the movie in that. Turns out Dick Miller was actually kind of unhappy with the final product of this movie, claiming that he thought the low budget really hurt this film. Which seems kind of weird to me, because I think it works fine. And I'm like, you know, Dick Miller, he's used to, he's a low budget king. Like, I mean, I know he's been in, you know, some bigger budget stuff, you know, whatever, down the road, but it's like, he knows, he's no stranger to, like, low budget. Like, oh, it just seems weird that he's bitching about this. Like, dude, you were in the Terror. You were in the Terror. Which really don't look bad, in my opinion, but whatever. Like, how low would you can get? I don't know. Anyways, he was upset about that. Taking a quick drink. So anyways, he was unhappy about it. And then, of course, you know, we mentioned before, we're in an era now of the drive-in and making teenage horror films or whatever. And so this was definitely cashing in on all that. Which, you know, worked out for its time. This thing got really good reviews and a lot of praise going to Dick Miller and his performance. In fact, even to this day, some people consider this to be the Roger Corman film. Which, Yeah, I would almost agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, I haven't seen his whole catalog yet, and I've honestly, being a huge poser here, I never did watch any of his Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price movies. So I maybe change my mind later down the road. But from what I've seen from Roger Corman, yeah, I would say this is probably my favorite directed Corman film. So this thing would actually get remade as a made-for-TV film in 1995. We'd like to see that. Uh, and then it was actually turned into a stage musical in 2009, which I haven't heard anything about that outside of reading it here. So I'm not sure. I guess it's not as successful as oh wow, blanking on it. My God, Little Shop of Horrors. Sorry, my God, it's late, guys. I'm not drinking caffeine. I'm just drinking these little Skittle drinks. I got sugar in me, but no caffeine. Anyways, so I don't think it hit the same success as Little Shop of Horrors, but still, yet I would love to see a stage musical, based on A Bucket of Blood. I say that. I did not get. I couldn't get into the musical Little Shop of Horrors. I know it's like considered a classic as well from my childhood, but I was never a fan. That's just me. Anyways, I do like some of the songs, but I don't know. Musical's not my thing. Anyways, so moving on now. One promotion that a theater ran was like, if you bring in a bucket of blood, you will get a free ticket to this movie. And I'm like, clearly that's a joke or whatever, but it's like, what if I took them up on that offer? Like, how you? I think it was like, you wouldn't bring in a real bucket of blood. Like, they taste it. They wouldn't taste it. I could bring in, do the carry thing, bring in some corn syrup, fucking red food dye, and be like, here's my bucket. And they're like, well, we're not gonna taste that, so sure, here's your ticket. I don't know. Kind of an odd promotional tactic there, but whatever. These sets would later be reused for Little Shop of Horrors, speaking of that. And this would be the last leading role for Dick Miller. So maybe that's another reason he's kind of bitter about it. Like, he never did get that. Like, he would be in a lot of stuff, but yeah, he was never really the leading guy. Oddly enough, the character Walter Paisley that Dick Miller plays, he would play 4 other characters in his career, all named Walter Paisley. He did it in Hollywood Boulevard, The Howling, Twilight Zone the movie, and Chopping Mall. So, a little fun Dick Miller trivia there for you. So, what I think about this movie, I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It was one of those movies that I didn't know what to expect going into it. I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't know it was a comedy. That's one thing. I went into it looking for like a straight horror film. This is before I really knew Roger Corman and his cheap style or whatever. The cheesy Corman type movies. I didn't know anything about that. So, but for whatever reason, I heard a lot. Like, this is always like on people's lists. And like when they talk about their favorite horror films or whatever, or favorite movies in general, I always heard of Bucket of Blood. So I didn't know what I was expecting, but I was like, I want to check this out. And so when I watched it, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I was still very pleasantly surprised. I think it's a fun story. It's kind of a sad story because even though Walter does go crazy by the end of it, you're still kind of rooting for him. It's the same, with Little Shop of Horrors. Regardless of the bad stuff that he does end up doing, you're still kind of on his side. So, anyways, but yeah, no, I always enjoyed it, and I'm cool with it getting the Golden Skull Award this year. So, for this year. So I'm all for it. This thing has a 6.7 on IMDb, 69% Rotten Tomatoes, and this thing made $200,000 at the box office. So there you have it, guys. Bucket of Blood is the #1 horror film of 1959, and that's it. Not only are we putting a cap on 1959, but we're putting a cap on the 50s. Starting next episode, we're going to be in the 60s. So there you have it, guys. I want to thank you for joining me on our little look back at 1959. On behalf of the Retro Horror Academy, my name is Daniel Richardson, and you are dismissed.